So welcome to session number 3 of this bootcamp recording session. For those of you that aren't a part of this, that are going to be watching this on YouTube later, we have a private Discord specifically for paid members of the course. So whether you got this on Udemy or Teachable, this course is available here on on a Discord server where we just have this session, or we hold these live sessions where we have Q&As. I also live code here, and I basically allow any students to interact and clarify things. And we also have teachers assistants. So for anybody that's watching this on YouTube, be sure to join. And if you don't have if you joined on Udemy, Udemy is not letting me send links. So make sure that you privately send me an email, and I'll make sure you get that invite link after we confirm your account. So in this session today, what we're going to be doing is covering static files and theme installation. I'm going to be having Praveen, who is a teacher's assistant, in here with me. He'll be bringing up student questions. He'll be helping out in the code section here. So we are using VS Code Live Share. So Praveen, if you can make sure that your I guess your mouse is visible here, can you try to click on some code here, make sure that you have it? So just type something out here. I just want to make sure everyone can see this. So I guess we'll wait for Praveen to do that. Yeah, there we go. So Praveen is right here. He is halfway around the world, but he's able to interact with my code here. So it's a really cool VS Code extension. I would highly recommend checking that out if you are working with teams here. So in this section, we're working with static files and theme installation. In the course here, we first cover the static files. So that's what we'll get into. So static files, these are going to be basically any kind of CSS, JavaScript files, or images inside of our website. So these are static, and these are completely separate from our application. We typically like to put them in their own file and then simply integrate them. So what we're going to do here first is we'll add in CSS. We'll do things the Django way, and then we'll add in some images. And then we want to get into adding in images based on what users actually upload. So far in our code, we have these products here, or projects. And if you go to them, so far in the models, we have not added any images here. So I actually commented out the image field. So if I go to projects here, in the project here, I commented out the owner and the featured image. So we left this out because this needs to be configured with static files, and there's also another library that's dependent on this. So we're gonna go ahead and take care of that right now. So the first thing is to configure our static files. We're gonna keep them completely separate from our application. So what I'm gonna do here is create a new folder in the root directory, and we're just going to go ahead and call this static here. So this is where all of our static files are going to be. So in the future here, we're going to have all of our JavaScript files. So I'm going to call that JS. That can be whatever you want. I just call mine JS. For our CSS, I'll just call these styles, and then we will also have images. So our static files at this point are going to consist of JavaScript, CSS, and images. So in the future here, in our images folder, we are going to upload things like profile pictures. So we can say something like profiles, and then anytime a user uploads their pictures inside of the images folder, they're going to have a folder specifically dedicated for profile pictures. So let's first connect the CSS file. So we'll go into static here, and I'm going to create a main.css. So we might rename these later, but for now, that's all we want here. And I want to do something obvious, so I'll just add in the body background color, and we'll just set this to gray. So let's just do, background color. First need to specify that. So background color, we'll do gray here, and let's see, what kind of text do I have in my template? So in projects here, I believe that I have an H1 tag. So H1, so whatever you have here, go ahead and select that tag. And let's just style that. We'll just make that blue or red, make sure it's obvious. So we'll just do H1, and we'll just set the color to red. So we're just building out a CSS file, and I want to show you how to connect it. So we want to just have some styles that we can actually see. Now, to connect the static files, Django has no idea about this file. So we're going to have to do things the Django way. So the first thing I want to do is actually go into my main project files here. So in settings.py, and in the course, we just call that dev search. In this case, I'm calling it dev search live. So we're just going into this file here, and we just need to connect the static files here. So we have static URL. To actually let Django know about this file, we're going to need to set a variable called static files underscore dirs. So directories, and this is just going to be a list here. Now, we could just access the base dir variable. So we could just go into, where was that? We could go into here, and this is just a file path that goes into the base directory. So we'll just do that right here. So we'll go into the base directory. So we're taking that variable, and then we're pointing to static like that. So we're going into the root directory, and we're sending it to the static file. So I know a lot of people have this issue with this connection. I don't know what happened with Django 3.0, but if you have an issue with this, just go ahead and import OS up here, which we already did earlier. So go ahead and just import that, and you can actually make this connection by doing os.path.join. And this is the way I normally do it in older courses. But just for now, just go ahead and do this if it's not working. So just go into static like that. So you could just code it in this way and comment that out or remove that, but we'll use this method, and I'll just comment this out for now. So now Django knows about this static folder. So all this did is it just set a file path to that static folder. So it's a lot like when we connected our templates here. We had to go into this templates directory, and we had to let Django know where we're storing templates, so where to find these. So that's all we did here with static files dirs right here. So if I go into my template now, so we'll go into main template. So I'll just add it here, and that way the styles can be applied everywhere. What I'm going to do here first is go underneath the doc type, and I need to load in a tag here, and this is going to be load static. So we're just loading in the static files, and we're telling Django that we want to be able to use the static files in this template now. So we always have to do this if we want to access the static files. So now I'm going to go ahead and go into this style link here, and I'm just going to uncomment that. So at this point, I have both of these commented out. So let's go ahead and just remove that, and I'll just comment out main.js on its own. So this is how we would typically set the file path here to our CSS. We would go ahead and set the href here, and then we would go and set a path. And in this case, we would do something like static, or yeah, we would do something like static like this. And then we can go into styles and then main.css. Well, in this case, we don't want to hard code this value. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do it the Django way, where we're just going to load in a tag here. So I'm just going to wrap this inside of a tag. And at this point, I'm going to leave these as a single quote, which means that inside here, I'm going to have to use a double quote. So we're going to wrap this in a tag. So that's a % symbol and a curly brace. And then in double quotes here, and we're only doing double quotes if this is a single quote for you. And all we're going to do here is we're going to add in static, so outside of the quotes here. So this is going to take us to that static folder. So immediately a path is set, and we are going into this folder here, so the static folder. Once we go into that folder, we just need to set the rest of the path here, which is going to be styles. So we're going into static, and then we're going into styles and main.css. So styles / main.css. So here we go. We have the tag. We put the file path in here. So the first file path starts with static. Then we're going into styles, main.css, and that's it. So that's the connection. So if I refresh this in the template, we should see that styling be applied here. So if I refresh it, and it might take a Control-Shift-R just in case it didn't fully refresh for you, you might have to do that to actually make sure it's applied. So now we can write CSS, and we're seeing the H1 tag be red. We see the background color set to gray, and we can just modify this any way we want. So we can remove something here, or we can set that to a white background. Let's just do that. And we can see all of these styles change. So the first static file, and I think I'm gonna have to do a Control-Shift-R. So yeah, it doesn't always update. So we have the first part of our static files completed here. So for images, we also want to be able to connect images into our project too. So what we need to do here, it's going to be pretty much the same thing here, but we need to just render out images by linking to this static tag here. So we need to use this static tag again, and we're going to need to point into the images folder and simply output that path. So let's actually go into projects.html. So I want to put this in a particular page. Actually, for now, yeah, let's do projects.html. So I want to use that in a different page. So we'll close out main.html. We'll close out our CSS and our views. And let's go into projects, templates, and then that's going to be projects.html. So because we're using that in here, we do need to load in static again. So let's go ahead and do load static. We'll save that, and let's add in an image here. So just above our projects title here, let's create the image, close that off here, and let's set the source here. So for this, let's go ahead and just grab a picture. We'll just look up a cat picture, do something random here, get a cat picture just because this is popular. Let's go ahead and save this into our project. So we're going into save image as, and we are going into desktop here. So desktop, and then we are going into dev search live, and we're going to add this into static and then images. So we'll save that, and let's close that out. So now inside of my static folder here, we're going to see images, and we can see this cat picture. And that was a GIF. So let me try to get a different kind of cat picture here. So we'll do that one more time. So cat pictures, and let's find this one. So let's see, what kind of file is this? I just want to make sure it's like a JPEG or something. So save as, and no, that's not the right one. So I probably should have had this prepped beforehand, but maybe I can add a filter here. Well, let's see, we should find one here soon. Okay, so that's a JPEG. So we're going into that file and we're saving that. So if I go into my text editor here, so let's go ahead and delete this first one that we downloaded. So we'll remove that, and we'll go back into static, and let's just change this to cat.jpg. So we have that inside of our images. So it's in the static file here. So now to actually link up to this, we have to do the same thing. So now I'm using double quotes here. So in that case, we're going to use the static tag, and we're just going to add in 2% symbols. We're saying static here. So that's going to send me into that static folder, and we are going into images and then cat.jpg. So that should link up the cat picture, and just in case it's too big, let's just set the width here. I'm going to style it, and we'll just set that to 200 pixels so it doesn't overfill. So that's how we link up to an image. So we didn't have to do too much more. All we did was point to the same static file, and now we're just pointing to the images folder and rendering that out. So if I refresh this, let's see what that gives us. So if I go back here, I'm probably gonna have to do a Control-Shift-R. Something is not working here, so let's see. Oh, I need to go back to the projects page. There we go. So this is the projects page, and now we can see that image. So if I go into open image, we can see the path go into port 8000, static, images, cat.jpg. So now we have our CSS and we have our images. So those are the two types of static files. And what I want to do now is actually render out a project image. So when we go to a specific project, we're going to have to render something out here. So this is going to be a little bit different. So for this, we are dealing with user-generated content. So that means that a user is going to be able to upload this, and that's coming from a model. So this is going to look a little bit different. And I actually want to show you something that I didn't do in the course because I saw an error in the comment section, and somebody was having an issue linking up their picture here. So I want to fix that and kind of show you a few workarounds here. So the reason why we uncommented this, or why we commented this out in the first place, was because the image field requires another package called Pillow, and this is simply an image processing library. So we'll go into this in a second. So we're going to set this to models.image field, and we just need to set some file paths here. So once we set the image, let me just grab my notes here. I want to make sure I'm setting the path correctly here. So we're going to go into the image field, and the first thing I want to do is set null to true because we are going to add in a new field when we run a migration, and we just want to make sure this is available to be blank, that it's an option here. So we're going to set null to true, and that's an N instead of an M. Praveen's trying to help me out here. Praveen, let me fix this here 1 second. So I'm just going to go back here. So that's going to be null, and then let's do blank. So just caught that one in time. Okay, so we could actually set a file path and where we want this to be uploaded, but by default, I actually want to show you an error that occurs here before we actually do this. So for now, I actually want to set a default picture. So we'll just do default here. So we'll do default like that, and let's just do default.jpg. So that's what we're going to set the default image to. So that means that whenever a new instance of this object is created, or when we run this migration, we're going to use this image here. And at this point, I'm actually just going to remove this because I want to show you the issue and then fix it here. So we'll add in that default image. So at this point, we just added the image field. So if I go ahead and turn on my terminal, we're going to see this error. So it's saying that we need pillow here. So it's basically letting us know that we want this image processing library, and this is a package that we should see, or that we should use. So we'll just do Django pillow. Let's look up the documentation. And I don't think that was the right link here. So it's this one that I needed. So here's a link here. And basically this is an image processing library. So Django can't do it on its own. So we need to add in this package here. So I'm going to go ahead and install this. So I'm going to turn this off here, and my VS Code is being weird. So I'm going to have to type in Python -m, and then let's just paste that in. So pip install pillow, and this should get pillow installed. So that's all we needed. So now if I turn my server back on.
I have a question there.
Sure. What's the question?
Where will be the default image will be added?
So
In
that's
the static folder or in the media folder?
So that's what I want to show you in a second. So we're actually going to run into that right now. So I actually removed that default.
Okay.
So we're going to run into the issue, and then I want to fix it. So I just turned on the server here, and we're noticing that this error doesn't show up here. So we installed pillow, and now we can use this image field. So anytime we're using that image field, we are going to run into that issue. So once we have pillow, we're not going to have it anymore. So with that being said, Praveen asked a good question, and he's basically saying, where is this image going to upload when we actually set this up here? So let's go ahead and turn on or open up our terminal here, and I'm going to open up a new one. And we need to run a migration. So we just added this field here, so we need to run another migration. So Python manage.py make migrations. We're going to run that, and then we actually need to apply that. So manage.py migrate. Okay, so my server is still on here. So let's go ahead and see what we have. So if I go into the admin panel now, so let's go into the Django admin panel. I'll close this out. We'll just do port 8000. Let's go into admin, and I'm just going to log in with my user. So if I go to project here, we are now going to see this image field. So this is the question that Praveen was asking. At this point, we did not set a default image. So we're going to have a slight issue here. So at this point, Django doesn't know where I'm sending this image. So it doesn't know where to upload defaults, and it doesn't know where to upload images at all. So if I go ahead and open up my file structure here, in theory, I want my images to go into static and then into images here. So this is where I want them to sit. If I don't set this, by default, when I upload this image here, it's going to be sent to this root directory just in here. So we don't want to do that. So I want to show you what that's going to look like, and then we'll fix that. So let's go ahead and choose a file from my computer here. At this point, let's go ahead and just grab the thumbnail to this project. So we're setting that image, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit save now. And let's move this. Look where that uploaded to. So that is in the root directory. So this is what we need to change right now. So let's go ahead and fix this. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this image. We'll remove that, and let's set it to static and then images. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and go back into settings.py here, and this is where we would configure this. So media root is what we're looking for. Media root is how we define where user uploaded content is going to be sent. So let's go ahead and do media_root, and we're going to set this value, and we're going to use base_dir. So we're going into the base directory, and we're going to tell it to go into images here. So actually we need to go into static and then images. So we're basically telling media root, when a user uploads an image, go into static and then go into the images folder and upload that picture here. So let's just save that. And I'm actually going to go ahead and go into my GitHub repo for this project, and I want to grab a few pictures here. So I want to start working with those rather than what's in the root directory. So that's going to be Django 2021. So this is going to be linked out for everybody that's taking the course here. This is the source code. So let's just download everything here. So you could run a git clone. I'm just going to download the zip file, and we'll bring that down here. Throw that in here. Let's go ahead and close that. And all these files here, once I move this outside of the zip folder, so let's delete the zip folder here. And I know I'm doing things a little bit manually, but we can go into the main folder here and we'll go into static. Actually, I think this is in resources. So resources and then images here. So this is where we're gonna take all these pictures from. So let's go ahead and go back into my admin panel and let's upload another image. So we'll go into e-commerce website. Let's go into choose file here. So into the featured image, we'll go into the desktop here and we want to get those files. So let's see, Django Master 2021, resources, and then we'll go into images. So let's find that e-commerce website. So let's just grab this one and let's add that image. So I'm gonna move this to the right here. So when I hit save, we should see that image be sent into static and then into images. So let me bring that back up. And if I hit submit, so we just set that. If I hit submit, there we go. So look at that. So this image is now not in the root directory. It's not down here. It's inside of images here. So now we uploaded it and that's it. So that's how we set user uploaded images. Now to render this, we're gonna have to do a few more things here. So we need to set something called a media URL here. So at this point, we have our featured image field and we can't just do something like projects.featuredimage. It's still not gonna work. So we actually need to set the URL path to user uploaded images. So right now, when we uploaded that static image here of this cat here, if I open that up, here we have a URL path going into static and then images. So we need to set this for these user uploaded images here. So to do this, let's go into settings.py and we're gonna set something called media_URL here. So this can be in theory whatever you want it to be. So at this point, we're just gonna set this to images here. So that's gonna be the actual URL path. So if you don't set this, you actually in theory don't need to set this. This value is already here and by default, it's an empty string like that. So it's gonna be an empty string. So I'm gonna set it here and I'm gonna set it to just images like that. So / and then a / after. So we're just saying this is gonna be the URL path. Now to actually configure this, we are gonna need to go into our root directories URLs here. So let's just close out all of these. And we are going into urls.py and we need to make a few imports and then add in these images. So the first thing I wanna do is go into from Django.config here or conf, and we want to import settings. So we want access to settings.py. So we want access to this file here. So we import that and then we are also gonna import a function called static, which helps us make this connection. So this is gonna be from Django.conf. Let me redo that. So from Django.config.urls.static, and we're just going to import static. And Praveen, if you see any questions, go ahead and bring those up here. I'm not seeing the chat, and I probably wouldn't imagine there would be too many questions on this section. So we imported settings, which gives us access to.
There is a question.
Sure, let's see it.
So Roshan is asking, is it not a better practice to store user uploaded image from static folder images? Like we can have a separate folder, or we can also set our media folder in our settings.py like /media/images. So we can keep them separate from static files, and we can make a dedicated folder for media files that will be user generated.
Sure. So in this case, that is an option, and I actually agree with that. So you could create a file or a folder called media and then separate images completely. In this case, because we're not going to be dealing with too much, we're just going to leave it the way that it is. But you're right. That is a good way to do it, and it's completely up to you. So that's a good question, and we're doing that we're doing that kind of like that already, where we have our images here. And these are going to be just images throughout the website. Now I could create that folder and call that media and then change this to something like website pictures and then separate this into profile pictures and project pictures. So you're absolutely right. So the question kind of would point to something like this. So we would just do a new folder here and we would just do projects like that. So this picture is for our profile pictures. This one is, or this folder is for profile pictures, and this one is for projects. So you're absolutely right. You can do that. And for anybody watching this later, take note of that. You can absolutely separate files like that. So in this case, I'm going to store all of my user uploaded content and any other pictures inside of my images folder, and only profiles will have their own folder. Now, the main reason for this, and that's a good question, and the reason why I want to address it right now is later on, we are actually going to be using AWS S3 buckets. So Django by default doesn't actually, or is not built to serve static files. So any user uploaded content won't even sit in here in the future. We're not even going to upload it into our files here. We're going to send those up to a server somewhere, and that's going to be either an S3 buckets. You can use Linode or whatever kind of system you want for that. That's usually best practices. You wouldn't actually store those in here. So that's why we're not too concerned about separating them out right here. So with that being said, I hope that addresses that question there. Let's get back to this. So we made these two imports. Thanks for bringing that forward, by the way. So we made these two imports, and now we actually need to set the URL path for this. So the URL path to connect to our media images here. So down here, we're just going to do URL patterns. So we're taking this URL pattern and we're just going to append to it. So we're going to do plus equals, and we are going to use this static function. So we're taking the static function and we're basically adding another path to this. So it would be the equivalent of making another path like this, and then hard coding that in. We would just say something like images and users or whatever we wanted to do here. So it's the equivalent of doing something like that, but in this case, we're using this static helper method here, and we are going into settings dot media underscore URL here. So we're going into settings.py. We're taking this media URL. So now the URL is going to be images. So we're just taking that variable. So that's going to be the actual URL path. Then we need to set the actual file that we're going to go into to get these images. So we're going to do document underscore root. And then we are going to set that to settings.media underscore root. So we just connected media URL to media root. So now we have a URL path to get all these images here. So this now is going to be an added URL to this URL patterns here. We connected that, and that should set it. So let's go ahead and test this out to actually render this out now. So we're going into projects now. And inside of projects, we're going to go into single project or single-project.html. So anytime we go to a project page, so if I go to e-commerce, I want to render this image out here. And I'm actually going to show you another error that's going to occur. And this was in the comment section that appeared today, so it's a perfect chance to actually address that. And I can't remember who actually asked that, so I hope they see this stream later, or maybe they're even in the chat right now. So whoever you are, I hope you see this, because this is going to solve that problem. So inside of single project.html, we have access to the projects and we have the project model. So we can actually access this attribute right here and render out pictures. So in this case, let's go ahead and just render out the image above the title here. So let's go back in here and we have our title. So let's go ahead and create some space. Let's create our image tag here and let's set the source. So we'll set a source here, and right away, I'm actually going to set some styling here. So some of these images could be really big. So we'll just set this to like 500 px, so 500 pixels, and let's just set max width so it's going to be responsive. So to actually connect this, we're not loading in static like we did before. So remember, in projects here, we did static and then we set that path here. This value needs to be dynamic. So this image is going to change depending on who's loading up the page here. So in this case, we're just going to go ahead and set the variable, and we're going to get the project here. So remember, we're getting access to the project. We pass this in through the view, and we need to go into featured underscore image, and this is going into this attribute. So this right here will not work. So let me actually show you this right now. So we cannot just go into the attribute because this is going to point us to the file path and not the actual image URL. We want the image URL. So if I save this, let's see what we get here. So if I go into e-commerce website, we see this right here. And if I open this up, we get this weird path here, but it still doesn't really know what to do here. So let's go ahead and actually set that path. So right now we want to point to the URL and not just the file path. So we're going to add in dot, accidentally highlighted that. We're going to add in dot URL like that. So the attribute name and then URL here. So let's go ahead and refresh that. And there we go. So now we have access to the image URL. If I open this up here, look at what we set. So this was the static URL that we added. So in settings.py, the static URL is images, and then we connected that inside of urls.py. So now we see images and then the image name. So that's how you connect user uploaded content. So I actually want to show you a fix to an error that's going to occur here. So at this point, we only have pictures for one product here. So I didn't set the default, so that means school management platform has no file and the portfolio has no file either. So if I go to these, if I go to portfolio, we're going to see this error. So what's happening here is we're trying to access featured image and we're trying to access that URL attribute. So in single project, we're trying to access this. Well, this featured image doesn't even exist. It has the attribute, but there is no image. So it's saying, hey, how can I get this URL if that image doesn't even exist? One fix would be to make sure that we always have a default picture uploaded, and that's an option here. But what if you accidentally download or delete that default picture? You're not gonna have a file associated, so it's gonna cause this error. So we wanna fix this right now. So I've always used this fix, and I actually really like this. So what we're gonna do here is instead of calling this image URL here or the featured image, we're gonna create a method inside of our project model, and we're gonna check if we have an image. If we don't, we're just gonna render out like an empty string, or we can set a default here. So let me just pull up some notes here. I wanna make sure we're doing this the right way. So down here, this is a class. I don't think we wrote any methods besides that string method. So this is Python stuff, so you should be familiar here or familiar with this. But we're going to create a function for the project model here. So we're just going to go ahead and create a new function, and I'm just going to call this, let's see, featured image. Let's just do image URL like that. So image and then URL is all capitalized. So that's going to be the method here. So in this method here, we're going to pass in self here, and we'll just do return, and then we want to actually return the value. So in this case, let's go ahead and go into this featured image attribute. So we want to write a condition, and we'll just say image or img, and we're going to set that to an empty string. So then we want to return that empty string at this point. Then we also want to check a condition here. We're just going to say if self dot featured image dot URL. So if this exists, then we want to set this. And in this case, I'm actually going to write a try catch here. So we'll just do try, and then we'll just do accept here, not a try catch, but a try accept. So let's do this. Let's take this image variable, and we'll say if there is a featured image URL, let's go ahead and take this value and set that to image. So there's different ways of doing this. And then if that doesn't exist, so if we get this error here, so we have a try except here, so that means that it's not going to throw the error, it's just going to go to the next value. It's going to go to this except block. If this doesn't work, and by the way, I need to completely remove this. So let's see, I'm rewriting this. So we're going to try to set this to the image URL. If this doesn't work, then we're just going to set image to an empty string. And that's it. So let's make sure that this is working. So now we don't have to access that URL attribute in the template. So I can actually set this as a property. So we're going to add in the property decorator. And for those of you that aren't familiar with this, this just means that we're pretty much accessing this method here as a property. So we don't have to trigger this later by writing in these parentheses here. So it's still a function, but we don't have to access it that way. So we set that as a property, and then we take this image URL, which is going to be an empty string or the actual image URL. So now in single project, I can actually get rid of all of this right here, and we're going to do project.image URL, and that's it. So if I save and refresh that, now we have no image for this one, so we don't actually have that image URL, so it's just going to leave that blank and it's not going to throw an error. But if I go to e-commerce website, we are actually getting that value. So I hope that makes sense. It's a little work around the issue. It's kind of a hacky fix, but all we did was add in a method, and we just make sure that we don't run into this issue. So any questions so far here, Praveen? Are we seeing anything? I see you're going into the chat
Yeah,
here.
there is one more question.
Sure, let's go ahead and bring it up.
So what happens if we upload same name files, like we have cat.jpg and we upload it again? So is there gonna be any conflict, or
Yeah,
like I know,
so
but you can answer that.
I actually want to have you jump in here if you know something different than me. So the image name is actually going to be we're just going to add in like a string value. So let's try this. So basically the name of the image itself will change. So let's go into portfolio, and right now inside of our file here we have, let's see, static, and we can actually set these methods. So we can actually tell it, hey, override it. By default, we're not going to override it. We're just going to change the name. So this image is called Django React course, and this is connected to the e-commerce website. So let's re-upload the same image again. If I add this and hit save here, it's just going to add in the new image, and this is customizable here. So if we go into static and then images, look at what we have here. So we have Django React course.jpg, and then we have the same image, but now we added in this URL here. So that's a really good question, Praveen. If you wanted to add to that, go ahead and let me know. I know that with S3 buckets, we can actually set this to where we can say, we can actually set it to overwrite a value or simply just append some kind of string to the end of it. Yeah, so we'll have to address that later. Pravina did the same thing. So let's just get back to that later. Hopefully if the internet connection starts working. It was, again, every third word. So yeah, let's get to that later then. Let's move on from here. I think Praveen was basically saying the same thing I'm saying here, where it just decides to just append a string to it. That's a default value, but you can customize that. So at this point, if there are any other questions here, looks like we don't have any right now. Let's go ahead and jump into the next section. So we handled our CSS files, our image files, and we even dealt with media or user uploaded content. And what I want to do now is actually work on uploading images inside of the form here, or basically submitting images with our project form. So we added in this field here. So right now, if I go into add a project, we now have this featured project image, and that was added by default. Sorry, I almost choked on my own spit. So that was added by default inside of our model form. So let's go in here and we'll go into forms.py. So right now we're only excluding two fields here. So by default, that image field was added when we added that into our model. So we see this, but if I add a new project or try to modify one, this image field will not submit here. So this is what we want to customize now. So anytime a user submits a project, let's actually try to do this. Let's just say let's see, actually, what were the names here? So we'll just do project number 4, and we'll just add in some text here, set some values. So if I submit this, if I go to project 4, we're not seeing an image. So if I want to edit this, let's go ahead and go to edit. If I try to add in an image, let's go ahead and grab in the portfolio website. If I try to submit this, we selected that value here, but if I hit submit, we're not going to see this project here. So that image did not upload, and we're not seeing that in our static files. So we need to configure this. There's a few things that we need to do here. The first thing is we need to go to the front end, and we need to let it know that we are submitting user uploaded content from the form. So inside of our templates, we'll go to project form, and we just need to add in one thing here. So with method, and then after our action, let's just add in, let's see, I'm trying to actually remember what the actual code here was. I need to take a look at my notes here. So in our project form, we need to add in the inc type. So we'll just do inc type, and then we need to set this to multi-part form data. So that auto-filled it for me. So we're basically saying that we are going to send some more form data with this. So we're going to send in some files. This doesn't have to be images later on if you have like a PDF you want to send or anything like that. This is what you need to modify here. So we need to let the form know that we're sending files along with the standard form data. Now in the backend, we also need to process this right here. So let's go back into our views.py, and inside of views.py, let's go into create project. And all I need to do here is inside of request.post, we need to pass in request.files. So because we're sending that form data inside of request, there is going to be a files attribute now, so we can actually send that with it. So we also want to do this on update. So this is create project. We'll just go into update here. And in update, we want to add this before instance. So I'm going to paste that in, add the comma, and that's it. So we updated the form here to send that. And then in the backend, we just pass in request.files. So now if I refresh this, so let's go ahead and refresh it. This is project number 4. Let's go into edit here. So we'll go into edit, we'll select a file, and we'll just select the portfolio, submit that. Now if I go back to the portfolio, now we see the image. So the image was sent and processed. If I add a new one here, it's going to update that. So let's go ahead and delete project number 4. Let's go into portfolio. Let's actually update that picture. So I don't want the e-commerce website there. So let's go ahead and remove that. Select the new image, portfolio. And at this point, remember the R being overridden here or overridden. So we'll submit that, school management system. We don't have a picture for this, so I'll just add in something random. So let's go ahead and call it Yoga Vive. So we'll update this image and we'll just do Yoga Vive. Okay, so that's it. We have all our pictures now. Those are being uploaded. So now we not only know how to render out user uploaded content, we now know how to allow a user to submit those. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about here, and this is maybe jumping a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but I want to talk about user uploaded content, or not user uploaded content, but static files in production. So once you're ready to deploy here, and this is kind of like a bonus feature, so if you get stuck here, don't worry about it, just jump into the next section here. But whenever we're pushing an application to production, we are typically going to set debug to false here. So in settings.py, we're going to set debug to false. So let me just show you what this looks like. So right now, if you don't know what this is at all, let's just go ahead and do /. If I type in a URL here, we're going to get this error here. So when debug is set to false, this basically means that it's going to help us debug our application. So it's going to tell us what the error is, what kind of URLs we have in this case, or whatever the issue is. It's actually going to return that into the browser so we can see it and fix it. Now, once we push this live, we don't want users to actually be able to see this. If somebody wants to do something malicious on our website, if they see all of our paths here or exactly what the error is, they can really do some damage on our website. So by default, debug has to be or should be set to false here. So we're going to set that to false, and right away, if we open up our terminal, we're going to see this error. So it turned off our server, and now it's not going to let us load our website. And that's because anytime we set debug to false, we need to set some allowed host here. So allowed host are basically the URLs that are allowed to access this website. So in this case, let's go ahead and grab some of these URLs here. So this is just going to be a string here. We'll remove the // here. And we're saying that this right here, this root domain is allowed. We can also allow localhost. I know some of you like to do that. And then later on, it would be something like mywebsite.com. So whatever domain you buy here. So I'm going to remove this last part, and we're going to set this right here and then localhost to our allowed host, and that should fix that issue. So now I can turn on my server again, and I know it's a little bit outside of the scope of static files, but I'm going to connect the dots here in a second. So if I refresh this, now when we get this error, the user is only going to see something like this or any custom 404 page that we want to show them. So now not everyone can see what's going on with our website. So we wanted to set that. So we can still see our pages here, but now allowed host is going to block any errors. So the only issue with this is that Django is now not serving my static files. You notice how that red text goes away, and if I go to any one of these projects, which if I do a Control-Shift-R, the project image will not show anymore. So this means that Django in production can help us work with static files. It actually allows it, but it's saying that once you push this live, we want you to take care of serving these static files on your own. Django is not built to do this for us. So we're going to have to configure a few things. The first thing is I want to make sure that my CSS loads here. So I want to make sure that this text here is actually set to red. So let's go ahead and take care of this. So to do this, we're going to need to go back into settings.py. Let me know if I lost anybody there. Praveen, bring any questions here. I just want to make sure that we're following along here with the debug thing. So right now, Django's not serving the static files, and what we need here is something called static root here. So just want to pull up my notes again. Give me 1 second to bring these up. Okay, so we have our media root. This is where Django's uploading media, uploaded content. And now we want to set static underscore root. So this right here is basically a path to serve static files in production, or it's just a connection to a certain set of static folders. So in this case, I'm just going to set static root to base dir, and then we're going to do / and we're going to do this, or we're going to call it static files here. So what's happening here is when debug is set to false, Django is no longer going to look into this folder here. It's no longer looking into static to get the folder, or to get these images or any other files. What it's going to do here is when debug is set to true or false, I always get that mixed up. When debug is set to false, Django is now going to look into static root to serve up static files. And there's a bunch of different ways that we can still configure this, but for now, this is what we're going to take care of. So what's happening here is we're going to tell Django, look into the base directory and look for a file or a folder called static files. Now, when we run this command, it's going to be called collect static. This is basically going to bundle up all our static files from here. It's going to take any other static files that we have on our website, including the admin panel. So if I go into the Django admin panel, if I do Control-Shift-R, look at this, all the static files went away. So I just did a hard refresh. So that means that even the admin panel has JavaScript files, CSS files, and all these other files that it needs to work with. And these are no longer working because debug is set to false. So at this point, we are going to run a command called collect static, and it's going to take all of our static files, bundle them up, and it's going to put them into a folder called static files here, or whatever we name it. Now, this folder doesn't exist, so anytime we run this command, it's going to generate that folder, or it's going to simply find that folder and add them. Now, we run collect static anytime we want to go into production, so this is a command that we run more than once. So let's go ahead and try this. So we're just going to do Python manage.py collect static, and before I run that, let's take a look at the left here. So when I execute this, we're going to see a folder called static files get created. So if I hit enter, it's going to go ahead and generate them. And if we look at static files, now we see our images. So it made a copy of what we have in static. Now we see all of our images. We see styles. If we go into admin, this is all the CSS for the admin panel, fonts, anything that we have with the admin panel. So it took all the static files and bundled them up. Now, if I happen to make a change, I would run collect static again. And in this case, it's going to tell me, or it's going to ask me if I want to actually execute this. And I'll hit yes. And it told me that there were no changes. So now it looked for this static files folder and added any files that we need. So Django is now looking into static files to serve up these pictures in production here because debug is set to false. So to actually connect this, we need to go into our URLs now. So in our root directory, we'll go into URLs here, and I'm actually just going to copy this right here. And we need to set a file path for Django to look for our static files now. So if I go ahead and do static URL here, so now we're going into static URL. So we're setting a file path for that. And we're going to tell it to look into static root. So now, anytime we're in production, Django is going to look in here for our static files. So we connected static URL and static root, just like we did static or media URL and media root. So that was kind of a big breath of wind there, but I hope that's kind of making sense. So now let's go ahead and test this. So if I go back into my project here, if I do Control-Shift-R, this should serve them up. Let's see. Praveen, if you saw me miss anything, let me know. Let me try this one more time. So I just saved everything. Let's make sure my server is on. What did I miss?
Is it
Your
working?
Can you just message it? My audio's, or your audio keeps checking out here. So let's go into the notes here. I'm just going to see if I missed it. So we ran this collect static command. So static files is right here. We configured static root and we set that to base dir. I guess this is the fun part of debugging live. So static files, that's all right here. We connect the URL here. Let's see, static URL to static root. So far, it looks like everything's good. So I'm going to save it again. I'm going to try maybe turning off my server. Let's try running that again. Control-Shift-R. Let's see the admin panel, actually. Let's give this a test. So the admin panel doesn't have styling. Okay, Control-Shift-R. Still not doing it. Okay, what did I miss? Oh, one last thing. I totally forgot about this. Let's see, Praveen maybe messaged me that. Yeah, so static files doesn't serve, or Django doesn't serve static files in production. I completely forgot that I missed this. So there's different ways of doing it. There are people that take all of their static files and put them up into S3 buckets. I personally like to still use a third-party package for my static files, and I only stick to user-uploaded content on these platforms like AWS S3 buckets and so on. But Django does have a package that allows me to work with these right away. So let's just do Django white noise. So white noise is a third-party package here that allows me to serve up static files, and there's different ways of connecting it. So this is the documentation here. So what we're going to have to do here is run a pip install for white noise. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll do python -m and then paste that in. So pip install white noise. So we need white noise to help us serve these static files. I can't believe I forgot that. So now all I'm going to do is go into settings.py. We're going to take this string right here and we're going to add this to our middleware to let our project know that white noise is going to serve these files now. So this is something else. We're not going to do this right now. So we're just going to go into, let's see, settings.py, and let's go into middleware. And we're just going to add this at the top here. So we'll paste that in. So this is our default middleware, and we just added white noise right here. So that's from the documentation. So now if I save this, now it should work. There we go. So now we see our images. And if I go into the admin panel, now all the CSS is working. So Django is now using collect static here, or using all the files from collect static. So if I actually made a change here, so let's go ahead and try something. If I go into main.css and change this to blue, this is not going to work here. So if I save that and if I refresh it here, we're not going to see that change. Why is this happening? Well, this is occurring because Django is actually looking into static files instead of static. So for this change to actually apply here, we'd have to run python manage.py collect static. So if I hit yes, now it tells us that we have one file that changed. And if I go ahead and refresh that, now we're going to see the change here. So this is why we work in our production environment, or in our testing environment, I guess. Is it production? Yeah, production environment. So this is why we work in here, so we're not having to run collect static every single time. So if I actually want to set this back to red here, so let's just do red. We're not going to see the change right away, but if I go back into settings.py and set debug to true, now we'll see it. So now Django is going into static instead of static files. So this is only for production. So I hope that makes sense. I wanted to show you that error because people always run into that issue once debug changes and they don't really understand what's going on. So we just wanted to cover that. So that's it for the static files portion. How's everybody doing? Any questions here? Praveen, at this point, I think you're just gonna have to message them. I'll look into the chat here, but your audio connection is pretty bad here, so we'll have to just work around that. So if you have a question, message that. What I'm going to do here is actually move on to the next section, and we want to install a theme here. So Praveen will be in the chat. Okay, perfect. So for those of you that are watching this after, I'm communicating with the Discord server where all the students are at and the TAs. Okay, so we have our static files connected, and this is where we want to move on to the next section. So in the course, we go into theme installation, and these are going to be pretty long sections. Up until now, we've been dealing with pretty short videos, but this one is 34 minutes and 46 minutes. So with static files, it's appropriate to talk about theme installation. So in that GitHub repo, we just downloaded the entire source code to this project. Now in that source code, there was a folder called resources. Inside of resources, we have a folder called themes. So go ahead and extract that theme here, and we want to take a look at what's in here. So the theme here was built by my awesome designer, Sharir Shuvo. He put together this awesome theme. So let's look at what we have and let's look at installing this into our Django application. So I was kind of trying to decide whether we should hard code all the CSS here or use a theme. And I ended up going this route because it's a lot faster. And at the same time, as a Django developer or as a full stack developer, there's going to be a good chance that you're going to be working with a designer, or some company is just going to give you a theme and tell you to install it. So you're probably not going to be writing all this out yourself. Even if you're working on your own projects, I did this at work when I built out my application. I just got a theme and installed it instead of having to write everything out. If you're not a designer or a CSS developer, you should know how to customize things, but you don't really need to write all this out yourself. So let's go ahead and just use a theme that is provided for us. So this is custom built here, and this is our theme here. So if I go to the home page, this is what our home page is going to start looking like here. So if you want to see a live example, go to the demo. It's django-2021.herokuapp.com. This is actually the live demo, but this is the static files here. So this is our theme here. If we want to look through some of the pages, this is what we're going to be installing right now. So we have the home page, that's index.html. If we go to projects, this is what we're going to install right now. We'll install projects. So it's going to start looking like this rather than this ugly template here. So we don't want this anymore. We also want a project page. So if I go into, let's see, run file here. So if I go into single project.html, this is what we're going to start seeing. So this is what we want to start installing. And I see Praveen in the chat. He's saying, if you hate CSS and love good websites, install a theme. I always do the same. Yeah, exactly. Don't spend time on things that you don't need. If you want to learn CSS, absolutely go for it, do your thing. But why not just pay a couple of dollars or even find a free theme that's built by a great CSS developer, and you're just going to save yourself a lot of headache. You should know enough though to customize it. So to install this theme, let's go ahead and do this. Now every theme is going to have different things that it needs to do. And by the way, I want to actually go back to the last video here. Inside of that resources folder, there is a file or an image file called default here. So let's actually do this really quick. I totally forgot to set this up, so I want to show you this. So let's go ahead and open up dev search live, or dev search, whatever you called it. And let's open up that GitHub repo, the Django 2021 master folder. So we're going to go in here, and in static, inside of images, I'm going to go ahead and take the images here. So we'll go into resources, images, and let's just take this default image. So I'm going to copy that and paste it in here instead of dragging it over. I still want it to be available there. So let's go ahead and take that. So now that we have that default image, we can actually go to our model here. So we'll go into project, or the project model. So inside of projects here, models, and we're just going to go ahead and set a default value. So default here, and we are going to set this to default.jpg, I believe. Let's see, is that a JPEG file? Static images, and that's going to be default.jpg. So by default, because our static files are connected to go in here, it already knows to go into the images folder, so we don't need to worry about that. This is all configured right here. So inside of the media root. So that's how it already knows to do that. So all we have to do is write in default.jpg. So now if I add in a new project here, so let's go ahead and add a new one. Let's go ahead and do test here. We won't select an image. If I submit this, go to test, now we see that default picture. So that's what we just configured here. So let's go ahead and delete that and go back to our theme. So for the theme, let's go ahead and minimize this, and let's open up our project. So mine is dev search live right now. And then we don't want to open up Django 2021. We want to open up the theme that we just extracted. So the first thing I want to do here is go into static, or not static. Let's see, we'll go into templates, and we just want to get the projects.html file. So we'll go into projects here. So this is what we're going to see. We want to take this entire template. So close out white noise, and let's go ahead and copy that. So copy projects, and this is actually going into the projects app and then in templates. So let's go ahead and let's see, how do I want to do this? So what I'm actually going to do here, just had to think about this. I'm going to paste this into my root directories templates folder, and we're just going to extract the code from here. So once we do that, we still need to move on to do a few more things here. So we need to go into our UI kit. So let's take that UI kit, this folder here, and let's go into static here. And I just want to take this UI kit and paste this into my static folder here. So let's see, where do I want to put this? So inside of static, I just want to make sure I'm putting this in the right area. Let's paste it right here next to images, JavaScript styles, and the UI kit right there. So after that, we want to go into our styles here. So inside of styles, let's go ahead and open up this styles folder, and let's just copy app.js and paste that in here. So this app.js goes into our Django project. So that should be it. So that gives us the entire styling to the application. Now we want to start adding this in. So we'll minimize all this, and let's go into projects here and into projects.html. So we'll open this up here. This is our ugly template. And I also want to open up the design that Shuvo made. So inside of templates, projects.html. So the problem is they're named the same exact file. So let's actually rename this to theme. So projects theme. So now we know the difference. And I just need to open this one up on the side here and bring this in. So what we want to do here is we want to take all this code here from the theme. We want to extract it and put this into projects.html. So we want to start styling up this page. So to do this, I'm just going to extract one by one here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go into the projects theme, and I want to take that navigation bar and actually add that into main.html. So we'll start with the main theme of the website here. So we'll just do not live server. We'll just go into main.html, open this up to the side, and by default in the theme here, every single page has a header and all that information. So let's start with this header tag here. So this is where I feel like I can lose some people because we're just going through a bunch of HTML and CSS. So let's just go as slow as possible. So projects-theme, we renamed it. That's in our templates folder. This is what we just got from that main theme. Let's start with the header. This is going to be our navigation bar. So the opening header tag and the closing header tag. Let's copy this, copy it, and let's go ahead and go into main.html or navbar.html, and let's just paste that in here. So paste in the entire header tag in navbar.html. If I'm losing anybody, speak up here. I do want to clarify if you guys need it. So we're going to paste this into the main navbar. So if I go ahead and refresh that, now we're seeing these links here, and there's no styling applied so far. So to actually apply the styling, we need to go into the projects theme, and we need to see how we were connected to the original styles. So the first thing is we want to connect to app.css. So let's copy that and let's go into main.html. Let's paste that in here, and we need to do things the Django way. So now we need to go into static and then styles app.css. So in this case, let's go ahead and add in the curly brace, %, and then we'll just do static, and then single quote here, and then a single quote right here, and then a % and a curly brace. Okay, so that's going to apply the styling to the website here. Now, if we go back into the projects theme template, we also need to install the UI kit. So let's take this UI kit and let's also take in this link. So this is a CDN to some icons here. So let's copy both of these right here. And let's go into main.html. So let's make sure we're sticking with that. And let's paste this above our app.css here. So we'll paste that in here. And we need to configure this too. So I'm going to take everything from that single quote here, copy that, and let's just paste that in right here. So static UI kit, and then we're going to go ahead and close that off here. So we'll take that right there and paste that in here. So single quote, and there we go. So let's see if it's all working. Let's refresh it, Control-Shift-R. All right, so there we go. We have our header and that looks styled. Now we do need to drag in that logo. So the logo is not showing up. Let's see how we're connecting to that. So inside of our navbar, we have logo or images, logo.svg. So we'll go back into our theme here and we're going into images, and we're just going to take this favicon and the logo. So I'm going to select both of those, hit Control C, close that out, go into Dev Search Live or Dev Search, whatever you called your project. And let's go into static images and paste those in here. So now we see the logo and the favicon. And before we actually see that, we need to connect that too. So we'll go into navbar. Inside of navbar, I do need to load in static. So we'll just do load static. And let's just change this URL here. So we'll just do static, and we're going into images, logo.svg because we have it now. Single quote, %, curly brace. So there we go. And you might have to do a Control-Shift-R. So we have that logo. Let's actually add in a link to the homepage. So if I go to another page here, I want to be able to go back to the homepage by clicking on that. And at this point, it's just a /, but actually, I guess we'll customize that later. So that actually works for now. So we have the navigation bar. Now we want to actually output the projects here. So we have the nav bar that was added into navbar here. We connected the CSS files in here. We just had to modify that. So that's typically what you would do in a theme here. You would extract the templates that you need, and then you would find out how they connect to their CSS files and then customize this. I actually have a full video on YouTube on this. I did this like a year and a half ago, but I went online, found a random theme and connected it. So let's go back into projects theme here. And in projects theme, I'm actually just going to get rid of the header because we no longer need this. Let's get rid of anything that we don't need. So I'm just going to get rid of that, and now we have the body tag. So now we have all these dummy projects with this pagination. I'll actually get rid of the pagination for now because we are not using that. So, or at least we're not going to use that till later. So we can get rid of that. And what I want to do here is take everything from this opening main tag all the way down to the body or to the bottom. So we'll scroll down to the bottom here and we'll go into the closing main tag. So we'll copy that. And now we can go into projects.html. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to paste this below my table here. So we have our original code. I'm going to paste all that beneath it. And let's see our page now. So if I go in here, now we see our original code, and then we see all of this right here. So the images aren't connected here, so that looks pretty bad. But this is now inside of our Django project. So let's go one by one and connect these. Our search bar won't be connected yet. We'll do that later. So let's go ahead and take care of this. So to do this, we just need to start replacing data. So I'm going to close out my project theme here, and I'll just save it because we removed that header and the pagination for now. So the first thing I want to do here is get rid of this image here. So we don't need that cat picture. We don't need this title. And we just want to take this loop here. So what I'm going to do here, you notice how we have all these static pieces of or static cards here. We just want to get rid of all of them except for one. And then we want to iterate through our loop and actually output all of these. So for this, what I'm going to do here is start at the bottom. And we're going to take this first column here. So just pay attention to all the tags. So if I click this, it should show me the closing div here. So there are 6 here. So we want to get rid of this. We want to get rid of this next column. Let's go to this next one up here now. So we're just getting rid of anything we don't need. And we'll just keep the last one. So let's get rid of that. Let's see, I think we have one left here. So if I refresh this, there we go. So that's all we wanted. We just wanted this one. And I got rid of that title. So let's go ahead and actually output this. So what I want to do here is take this loop here, copy that, and we want to loop around this card and actually start outputting what we need here. So we'll go into column here. So projects list, container, grid, create some space here. And we're just going to loop through and find the closing section or closing div. And let me actually close this up here. So we'll just do end 4 like that. So if I save this, I haven't replaced any of the contents inside yet. So if I actually save this, here's what we have. So we had 3 projects and now we see 3 iterations of that. So I can actually start replacing the contents itself here. So the first thing I want to do here is take the project image. So as we're looping through the projects here, we actually never output the image here. So let's go ahead and actually just get rid of this table tag all the way to the top here. So we'll clean that up here. There we go. So that looks better. And let's get that image here. So for project in projects, we have a column. We link to a single project page, so we want to change that URL. So we're just going to start customizing information here. We'll just do URL, and this is going to project and the project ID. Project.id. And is that what I called it? I want to make sure that the name for the URL is actually that. So project. Okay, so that's good. So we're linking up to the project. We need the project image here. So we'll go into the image tag here. We'll take this, set the variable. We'll just do project. And then this will be .image URL. Remember, we made that method here, so we're pointing to that image URL now. Now, if I go down here, we have a title, so project title. This is going to be project.title. So project.title, and we want to add in another link here. So this is going to be to the profile. We'll take care of this later here. So I'm just going to set that to an empty string. So we don't have a profile for a user yet. We have not added in the votes yet. Let's see. We actually do have a vote ratio. So let's do this. We'll just do project.vote ratio. But because we haven't added in the functionality, these should all be 0, I believe. So we'll just do vote ratio. And we're going to do the total votes now. So we'll just do project.vote_total. Okay, so we replaced all that. Let's see, positive is actually misspelled here. So we'll have to fix that in the template. So for the actual tags here, let's also replace these. So let's see what we have so far. So if I actually refresh this, now we see real projects. So this is all real information. So if I click on this, we're actually taken to the project page. So we see the votes here, 0% out of 0 votes. Everything checks out here. Now I want to actually output real tags here. So let's go down into the tags and let's render these out. So we have our projects tag wrapper. Let's go ahead and get rid of all of them. 1 second here. So we're just looping through all of the tags here, and we're just going to output what we need here. So remember, this is a many-to-many field, so we can do project.tags. So we're accessing the tags attribute here. So we already worked with this before. So we're going into the tags and then .all like that. And this is going to be for project or for tag in project tags. Then we want to set end for, close out that loop. End for, and there we go. So now we just want to output the tag name. So we'll just do tag.name like that. So let's see what that gives us. If I refresh that, there we go. So now we see real tags, HTML, JavaScript, Django, and all of these are checking out. So everything looks good so far. So the next thing I want to do is actually render out the project page. So when I go here, I want to get that template. So we'll just have to minimize all this. Let's go back into our theme here, and we want single project here. So this is what we want our page to look like. So we'll do the same thing. We're just going to start customizing this information. By default, every single template here has the nav bar and all the header stuff because we can't do inheriting inside of just simple HTML. So we'll just get rid of this information and extract the page here. So we'll go back in here, copy single project here, move that over, go back to our Django project. We'll go into projects here, or static. No, we're going into templates here. So the root directory, we'll paste that in here, and let's just rename it to theme here too. We'll just do theme because we're extracting stuff from here, so I don't want to mix it up with the actual project page. So now at this point, this should be just repetitive here. It should be redundant. So let's go into the root directories templates folder. Let's go into single project theme. So this is where you see the same head tags. We don't need any of this anymore. We don't need the header section. We'll get rid of all that. And we just want everything inside of main here. So let's just copy all of this. So go all the way down to the closing main tag, copy that, remove this. I guess we'll just copy it and leave it open here. And then we'll go into our projects app, and let's go into templates, single project.html, and we'll open that up to the side. So now we want to clean up this page here. So I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to paste all the contents down here and start modifying those. So inside of single project here, let's go to the bottom. Let's go just above the closing end block here, and let's paste in everything inside of that main tag. So here's all of our code, and let's just start replacing things. So the first thing is we want to get the title. So let's copy that, and this is going into title here. So let's see, project title. So we'll find this right here, paste that in there. Then we also want to get the owner. So at this point, we'll leave that as Sharir Shuvo. We'll leave the link here to just an empty string. That's not going to send anybody anywhere because we don't have the author. And let's see. So let's actually change the image URL here too. So let's take this link. So we'll just do project image URL. Update this. That's going to be somewhere up here. So let's see, where is that image tag? Right here. So let's replace this right here. Let's see what we have so far. So if I refresh it, there we go. So we're seeing this information. I just want to change the about section. We'll change the votes and the tags here, and then everything can be just removed. So we'll go into here. Let's actually get these tags right now. Let's remove everything except for Figma, the last one here. Let's actually just go ahead and loop through this again. So for tag in project.tags.all, and then end that loop. End for, and then tag.name. Okay, so that's going to output those if I refresh it. So we see all of these. Now we should see the actual tags. So as we navigate through each project, we should see the correct tags being output. And let's see, what do we want to do now? So we want to get the description. So let's actually go into single project info. Let's take all these hard-coded values. Let's remove those. And we're just going to output them right here. So we'll just do project.description. So in here, I actually want to change one little thing up here. So if you notice that when I output this text here, if we have any space, the formatting won't show up here. So if I go into the admin panel, if I go ahead and go into a project here, let's go into e-commerce. If we add some space here, so you notice this space right here, we want that to show up in the template. If we add the space, that's obviously there for a reason. But if I refresh this, this will not actually show up. So we want to fix that too. So in this case, we'll go back to the template here. And let me just pull up a note here. So we'll go back to the template, and we just want to make sure that the actual formatting is there. So let's see. I forgot how I actually did that. Praveen, if you remember how to do that, I'm trying to figure out how to output the formatting.
What exactly?
So the formatting for the project description, I completely forgot how to do that. It was like we use a filter here, we use the pipe, and then let me actually just look this up here. So to make sure that this information right here is formatted, so you see that space right here? We want to make sure that that's being output. So let's see if somebody in the chat might know that.
I never did that.
So let me actually just look this up. I'm going to Google this up. So we have the rich text editor. I just completed this. I can't believe I forgot this. I might have to look up my my source code to the live project. So we have it for rich text here. And I think we could just do line breaks. There we go. So that's what it was. Line breaks. And then I think we add in a BR tag here. So we just do pipe like that, line breaks, BR. And here we go. So completely spaced out on that. So now if I refresh this, let's see if that worked. There we go. So this is what I was talking about right here. So if we add in some space, any kind of spacing here should show up here. So we basically add in this filter here. We add in the filter that's line breaks BR here. So we just added in a pipe and then threw that in. So that's going to help us with the formatting. I just wanted to make sure that you're able to change that. There's a good chance that that's what you're going to want to output instead of just the text. So let's just do project.vote_ratio for that. And the total votes here. So this will be, what the heck did I do there? So project.vote_total. And there we go, positive feedback. So this is misspelled. Okay, so let's see if I'm missing anything. So if I refresh that, now we're getting all the real votes. The project information is here. I guess the last thing I am forgetting, there's actually two things here. The last thing here at this point for the styling is we want to get rid of all of this. So we don't want that at the top anymore. So we're going to save that, refresh that, and there we go. So this is our page. So the very last thing I wanted to do is make sure that these links are being output. So if we don't have a link here, I don't want that to show up here. So in this case, let's just see where we add in those links. So we should see source code right here. So let's go ahead and do this. We'll write a condition here, and we're going to say if project dot source code. So if this exists, then we want to output this. So we'll just do an end if here, end if, and that's it. So once that's there, we'll take the link itself. We'll go into the href tag here, and we'll just do project dot source code. Okay, so that should output the link. So at this point, we don't actually have a link here. So if I refresh that, it goes away. So if I go into e-commerce website, let's say we go into source code and I add a link here, then that link should show up here. Let's see. So that's source code. Let's see, maybe I didn't save that. So let me try to save that here. So if I save it, now if I refresh it, that link should show up. What did I do wrong here? So if project.source code, let's see that model, source link. Okay, that's what it was. So if project has a source link, we'll output that, and then we'll also output the demo link. So we'll take the demo link, paste that in. Whoops. So these are only output if we have the link. Okay, so now if I refresh it, we don't have a demo link, we just have the source link, but if we add in a demo link, also at this point it's just a string, but those will be text, then those are being output. So that's it for this section. I guess the last thing I want to do here is just make sure these links are working. So at this point, they're not going anywhere. Let's just go ahead and actually update the nav bar. So those other links will be broken. Let's just save that. I'm going to go into my navigation bar. So we'll go into navbar.html, and let's just link to the projects page. And then all these right here will just be set to the pound symbol. So projects will actually send us to that URL here. So we'll use the URL tag, and we'll do URL and then projects. And then all these other ones will just be sent here. Okay, so I think in the actual tutorial, we took care of the form 2. So let me just refresh this. So we go back to a project, and then we can navigate. Cool, so at this point, I guess the last thing I can do is just build in a form here. So we don't have an inbox here. So what I'm going to do here is just get rid of, I'll just get rid of like inbox, and we'll just change that to add a project. So let's go ahead and actually just comment this out. Let's do the button here. So this login and sign up here. So I'm going to copy that, comment it out, and we're just going to paste in another one, and we'll just say add project. So for now, we're going to add a project from here. So we'll just do add project. Okay, so this is probably going to be the longest video of the entire course at this point. So in the URL here, we're just going to send the user to URL and then create -project, save that, and we're not going to be able to edit it from here. That's going to be from a user's account. So now we have add project instead of login, and we're going to change this later. So obviously we don't want any user to add a project. If I go to add project, we're seeing this. So in here, we'll do this part really quickly here. We'll go into the theme. Let's go into the form template. So what I did here is I actually created a template, or I had Shuvo create a template just for any form in our application. So we're just going to take this template here, and then we're going to install it and customize it. So in this case, let's take form template, and let's open up our project again. And we'll go into templates in the root directory, paste that in, and we're going to start taking this code. So this should be pretty quick here. If I go back into here, let's go into templates, form template. What I'm going to do here is get rid of everything in the head tag here, so we don't need that. We're just going to take the body, or actually let's get rid of header. Let's just take everything in the main tag. So we're going to take this form, and customize our form template. So let's go ahead and remove that. We'll save that. So we don't want all that extra stuff here. And in projects, in project form, this is what we'll do here. So I'm going to paste this down here. And I'm just going to go ahead and modify this form. So the first thing I want to do is take this post method and the ink type. And let's just take this and bring it down into this one here. So we'll remove post, or I'll just paste over it. So now we have a form with a class of form, the action, the method, ink type, and we also want the CSRF token. So we'll go into the CSRF token, or we'll go into the form, paste that in here. So that's all we need at this point. So the last thing I want to do here is get rid of this. So we're going to copy the form tag. Let's get rid of the initial form. And let's just go ahead and output all these fields here. So what I'm going to do here is get rid of any field that we don't need. So we'll keep this submit button here. Let's get rid of that one. And let's get rid of this one right here too. So what I'm going to do here is actually use the original form that we're working with. So instead of using this, what I'm going to do here is make a loop here. So we did this earlier when I was showing you model forms. We're just going to do for field in form, and we're just going to output all of these. We're just going to do end for. So in this case, I don't need the actual input, but there's one thing I want you to pay attention to. So I'm going to do this in this video. We'll actually fix this up, but you notice that in order to get the styling here, we are going to need the class of input. So that is inside of our theme. So we need this class here in order to actually style it. So at this point, there's no way of actually adding this class if we're using the model form. So at this point, we'll just do field like this. We'll replace that. And then up here, we'll just do field dot label. So we're just outputting the label and the field itself. So our form is going to be partially styled, but we still need to add in a class to that field to make it look nice. So let's go ahead and test this. We'll just open this up, and Praveen, I'm going to mute your mic here so the sound doesn't come in. So let's save this, and let's go back into our form, and let's refresh that. So we have all the styling. The form should work. So let's actually go into e-commerce project. I guess, let's see. Here's what we'll do here is we'll add a new project here because we don't have a link to the edit button. So let's just do an add project. Let's go ahead and submit this process here. So we'll just do new, add in a description. We won't have an image here, and we'll just hit submit. So I just want to make sure the form is working. So it's still working. Everything's good. So that means we connected it so far. But the actual fields here are not looking good. So for this, what I need to do here is I'm actually going to go into the model form. The model form is a class, and it's highly customizable. So we'll go into projects, and we'll go into forms.py, and we want to add in that class here. So let's go ahead and take care of that. Let me open up my notes here. So there's going to be some code here that I need to reference. So we'll go into our model forms. And what I'm going to do here is just override the init method here. So there's a few different ways that we can go about this. Every time I show one way, somebody always references a different way. This is going to be completely up to you, and I'll try to show as many ways as possible. So in here, we're just going into the init method. So this is a class. So we're just going to override the init method and add in some attributes. So whoops, shouldn't have done that. So we'll just do init here, double underscore, and inside of init, we're going to need self and then star args. So for the arguments and then keyword arguments, we'll just do star quargs. And once we set that up, we need to add in the super method. So we'll just do super. And then we need to specify the form that we're working with. So in this case, we're working with the project form. This is what we're going to override here. We'll pass in self. And after that, we'll just do dot double underscore init double underscore, and then we'll just do args and quargs. So that needs to be star quargs like that. So we're just going to take these two right here. Let's take in quargs and args, paste those in here, and let's go ahead and actually go through this. So what I'm going to do here is loop through all of the field names and add in the class here. So we're just going to do for here. Let's actually try this manually. So we'll just do self. So I want to show you how this looks. So we'll do self.fields. So we're going into the form fields here. We're going into each field, And at this point, the project form has different fields. So we'll start with the title. So we'll just do self.fields. We'll go into the title field. Then we're going to go into widget.attributes, so ATTRS, and we're just going to do update. So what we're going to do here is update a specific field. So we pass in the object here, and we're going to say class, and we want to add in a class here. So for the class, we're just going to set that to input. So in the template here, so if I go back into templates, form template, if I open this up to the side, you notice that we're getting our styling from this class here. So we have the class of input, and that's what gives it the initial styling. Some of the fields will need input text, but we're not going to get into that right now. We're just adding that class. So that's what we did here. So we went into the form, found a field that we want to update, and we added the class of input. So if I save this, take a look at what we have here. So right now, this is what the title looks like. If I refresh it, now we have this styling. So if I do inspect here, we're going to see that class being applied here. So that's all we did with that form. If this lets me move to the right. So apparently I can't scroll here. Let's try to zoom out. So we see that class right there. So that's what we just did. So to do this to all of them, I could go into each field individually and manually apply this. But instead of doing that, I'm just going to write a for loop. So I'm going to do for key and then value. So we're going to loop through this fields list of dictionaries here, or through the fields dictionary. And we're going to do for key value in self.fields.items. So it's a dictionary. We have to go into the items, and we're just going to do field or value. So we're going into the actual field here. So value.widget. And then let's see what did I do here? So widget like that dot attributes. So ATTRS dot update, and we're just going to add the class. So that's a little shortcut to do it. So we're just going to loop through that, and I'm going to comment this out so you can all still have that method. So in this case, we're just going to go through all the fields and add in the class here. So now if I refresh it, now every single class has that in our form. And we can change this up later. For now, we're going to leave it. But that's all we have for this video. So we updated the projects page, which is our homepage at this point. Pretty soon, the developers page will be our homepage. We changed up all the contents. Now on every single page, we replaced all the contents here. So we added in this theme. We still have work to do here as far as the user and the comments and so on. And we updated our form. So static files, the theme was installed. Long-winded session. How is everybody doing? Did everything make sense? I think anybody at this point can speak up here. So if you have any questions, let me know. But that closes out the session, and I'll probably cut the video right here.